This is the City of God podcast, where Christ meets culture. Welcome to the City of God podcast, where we explore today's biggest cultural issues through the lens of God's infallible word. I'm Pastor Rob Pacienza. Today's episode features a powerful conversation I had with my good friend, Riley Gaines, recorded live at our annual Kingdom Come conference in Fort Lauderdale. Riley has been in the headlines quite a bit lately, and I want to say how proud I am of her. In the face of intense criticism and heated public debate, she has stood firm for God's design, knowing that her identity is ultimately rooted in Christ and that she lives to please an audience of one. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Riley Gaines. Riley Gaines, so good to have you in studio today.
I am so excited to be in studio. I know I've been on your show before, but to be in the flesh is pretty exciting.
So we've all heard the good news, especially you, from the Trump administration, which should just be common sense these days, but it's not. But the order keeping women's sports just for women. And during that press conference at the White House, you were mentioned by name and really behind the inspiration for the order. Explain to our audience specifically what Trump has done and why it's so significant, particularly for the next generation.
Yes, well, this is huge. It was the greatest honor to be able to be there, to be standing beside President Trump as he signs this into law. I'm sure several of those who are watching or listening to this maybe saw the clips or the images that surfaced following this signing. But it was really the most amazing thing because he had all of these young girls, like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and they've got their jerseys on or their uniforms or their big bows that they wear in their hair on the soccer field, all surrounding him as he signed this. And if you look at these clips, they're so joyous, these young girls, because what President Trump is effectively doing is guaranteeing them a chance for an athletic future, which is certainly more than what was provided or ensured under the previous administration. So in short, what this executive order does, it bars men from participating in women's sports within any educational program that receives federal funding. What we have seen following this executive order, well, first it's important to clarify there's not a lot of longevity to these EOs that have been signed. It doesn't absolve states from doing what they need to do, and it certainly, these pieces of legislation still need to be moved through both chambers of Congress and then put onto President Trump's desk so he can sign into law much more permanently. But we have seen now even some states, some districts who have said, look, we're not going to comply with this federal law. I think the most viewed interaction was that between Governor Mills of Maine and President Trump. And I think she really thought she had this like mic drop moment where she told President Trump, look, we'll see you in court, which it was actually just this past week. They ran out of time. He said, I'll give you 10 days to basically issue an apology and say, the steps that you are going to take to fall in compliance with this EO, which they didn't do. So they have another 10-day period before it then gets sent over to the DOJ, where they will likely lose federal funding. So all that to say, yes, this is common sense, and it's so great to see accountability back in the White House.
God has given you such an incredible platform, particularly with all of the gender madness and the woke gender ideology that is coming our way, and particularly influencing and indoctrinating the next generation. God has given you an incredible platform to push back against the darkness. But this isn't a platform you asked for. It wasn't a platform you were pursuing. You're a swimmer at the University of Kentucky. Explain to us what was going on in your collegiate career that put you to the forefront of this issue in America.
Crazy. Yeah, to say that this isn't what I planned for myself would really be an understatement. I swam at University of Kentucky, as you said, did some really great things in my career, things that really I'll forever be proud of. But in my senior year of college, we're geared up, we're ready to go, ready to swim at our national championships, which is the pinnacle of our sport, right? It's comparatively faster than the Olympics because of how much depth the U.S. has, number one, and how many people from countries across the world come over to participate in the NCAA. So it's the most competitive, fastest meet in the world. That's what you train not just all year, but really all your life for. And me specifically, this was my last meet. This was the culmination of an 18-year swimming career. So I'm ready to go, very excited. until about 3 weeks before that national championships, when the NCAA released a statement saying that a swimmer by the name of Leah Thomas, who is of course actually Will Thomas, who swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania before deciding to switch to the women's team, would be allowed to participate in the women's division. Actually, their verbiage was that it was a non-negotiable, meaning there was nothing we could do. There were no questions that we could ask. There were no concerns that we could raise as women, as female athletes. We were quite literally told we had to accept this with a smile on our face. And so, I mean, I got to personally witness the tears that I saw from not just moms in the stands watching as their daughters are being obliterated in the sport that they once loved, but tears from girls who placed 9th or 17th and missed out on being named an All-American by one place, right? I can attest to the extreme discomfort in the locker room when you turn around and there's a 6'4", 22-year-old man, fully naked, fully intact, fully exposing himself, inches away from where we were simultaneously fully unclothed, right? The whispers of anger and frustration, I heard it all from girls who, just like myself, had worked our entire lives to get there. But what really thrusted me over the edge into no longer being willing to wait for someone else, because that's what I was doing. I was waiting for someone else to say something, was after Thomas and I competed against each other in the 200 freestyle, right? It's the A final, your top 8 women in the entire country. Dive off the block, I swim 8 laps of freestyle, touch the wall at the end, and I look up at the scoreboard behind me, and this man and myself had tied, meaning that we went the exact same time down to the 100th of a second, which, number one, I think is embarrassing for a 6'4" man. He couldn't even beat me. But 2, it's rare, right? You're racing for about 1 minute and 40 seconds and not even 1/100th of a second separated us, which you can't tell me that's not divine intervention. But anyways, we get out of the water and we go behind the awards podium where the NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself, again, him towering over me. And this official says, "Great job, you two, but you tied. We don't account for ties. We only have 1 trophy, so we're going to give that trophy to Leah. Sorry, Riley, you just don't get one." And that was really the moment when I asked the dreaded question, right, of why? Why are you so insistent on giving the trophy to the man in the women's 200 free? To which, of course, they didn't have an answer for why. But I appreciate his honesty, the official. He said, with a sad face, like I could tell he didn't even believe what he was about to say, but he said, "Riley, I'm so sorry, but we have been advised as an organization that when photos are being taken, it's crucial that the trophy's in Leah's hands." And that was it. That's when I knew it was me. I really remember in that moment on that podium, again, sharing my placement with a man standing 9 inches taller than me, holding this trophy I know I had to give back, where I just had this realization of, Riley, how in the world can you expect someone to stand up for you if you're not even willing to stand up for you? This has to come from you all as women, as female athletes. So the unfairness on top of the locker room, on top of really the emotional blackmail, I think is the best way to put it, that we faced from our universities to stay silent, all of that really compiled, and I just felt guilty. I felt like, well, because I had participated in the farce. At that point, I was just as bad as the people who created and enforced these policies. So, in short, believe it or not, that's the in short version. That is ultimately what has now allowed me to have the platform that I have.
Yeah. And although you didn't ask for that platform, you could have easily walked away. And so thank you on behalf of millions of Christians and people who love God's design for gender and sexuality and care about the next generation. Thank you for answering that call, because you could have easily said, this is unfair, this isn't right, but I'm really not going to do anything about it. And God has certainly used you to do something profound in the 21st century. Riley, so much of the transgender debate has been centered recently on athletics and sports, but the transgender ideology goes much deeper than sports. Sports is a symptom, but doesn't it go much deeper than just what we're seeing in the world of athletics?
It has impacted virtually every realm of society, every aspect of society. We have seen this gender ideology movement and the blurring of reality, it's on full display. We see the celebration of it, right? Of course, we see what's happening to children and the medicalization front, where kids, minors, I mean, children as young as like 3, 4, 5 years old are being chemically and surgically castrated for profit. Like, when you say that out loud, oh my gosh, I don't think it will be long, I really don't, before holistically we look back at this weird blip of time and we accurately call that what it is, which is the biggest medical scandal this world has ever seen. So of course we see it on the medicalization front, what's happening in the education system, right? Where again, you have what can only be described as activists, right? Under the guise of teachers or professors who have infiltrated their way into these schools or universities or institutions and are preying on the most vulnerable, God's most precious children, and they're influencing them in that way. We've seen how it's affected corporate America, right? The most obvious example is Bud Light, which they essentially lost $27 billion overnight, and then their next commercial was a big burly man on a motorcycle with the camo can. But yes, all of that to say, sports it's a symptom, and I believe it's the most obvious, the most, it's what's really lifted the veil for a lot of people, because again, it's almost like a South Park episode, right? Like, which is objectively meant to be funny, where you have this, big husky man standing atop the podium, pushing the woman off the podium. He's got the gold medal. It was a skit not too long ago, but now that South Park episode is more like a documentary. So I think that's what has allowed a lot of people's eyes to be opened, and maybe even persuaded them, not to make this conversation political, but to vote for the common sense party, the party who has vowed and who has decisively taken action to, again, prevent this from happening at any level. That persuaded a lot of people over. So yes, the sports, I think, is the most obvious example of how this movement is harmful specifically to women and children, but it extends much beyond that.
I'm glad you just said that. That leads me to my next question, because the trans issue really does come down to, do we have the right to define truth for ourselves? Do we have the right to redefine gender? Do we have the right to say, no, God, you're not right and you're not the final authority? There's multiple genders beyond just two genders. But sports does kind of make it obvious, doesn't it? It's super clear platform in which we can see this is true and this is false.
Of course. And again, think of the slippery slope that we have created by maybe sitting idly by. Maybe those of us who have known, especially Christians, really, those of us who have known the entire time, right, that it's a farce, it's not real, it's a warped perception of reality, but we've sat back and said, it's not really my problem. It's not impacting me. I don't have to worry about this. Think of the slippery slope that we have created, because if we are willing to, again, as a society, which is what's happened, if we are willing to deny the most basic of truths, right, like the sheer essence of humanity, it goes back to the first book, it's outlined very clear. He made them male and female intentionally and uniquely in his perfect image, and we have a creator who does not make mistakes. So of course from the biblical lens, but even objectively, like this is never something kindergartners have struggled to understand. Men and women are different. If we have allowed ourselves to blur that line, there is no line that cannot be blurred. I think it's appropriate to ask, actually I think it's necessary to ask ourselves, what's the next thing, right? It sounds insane, but can we start to deny our race, right? Can we start to deny our age? What if I want to identify as 65 years old and collect my Social Security check? It sounds insane, and people might laugh at that assertion, but it's the exact same, like the parallels are there between the two movements. So it's pretty terrifying. And then you look at not to get really deep here, but you look at the Marxist playbook of what it takes to have that control. Of course, number one, it is to remove God, which is effectively what we have done for decades now. And you blur the lines of truth, and that's what we're seeing. Yeah.
No, I think you're right on. If you redefine truth, or believe that you have the right to redefine truth, then anything's possible.
Yeah.
Speaking of having much to celebrate, but also a lot of work to be done. We're seeing stories all the time of girls being punished for refusing to change with biological males in the locker room. That's just one example of the work that still needs to be done. In your opinion, what are the pressing needs right now in the 21st century that need to be addressed to move the ball forward? It's
so good you bring this up because, again, I think a lot of conservatives, a lot of Christians think, look, Donald Trump is in the White House. I don't have to worry about this.
Again, time to be complacent.
Exactly. But hear me when I say the war on woke is so far from being won, right? We're starting to see a lot of what is being exposed, but it's really just the tip of the iceberg. We saw even just this past, maybe a week, 2 weeks ago, where Governor Evers of Wisconsin, in their state statute, attempted to change the word mother to inseminated persons, right? Like, that is insane. Like, we've been called it all as women: cervix havers, uterus owners, menstruators, bleeders, chest feeders, birthing people, but inseminated persons really takes the cake. All of that to just highlight. We saw a huge protest at UC Davis yesterday that got violent. We saw a pro-life advocate attacked yesterday. Cut her face all up. She's bleeding all down her face. The woman who assaulted her ran off. Like all of these are just happening within the last week. I could keep going on. So the most pressing needs, number one, I wish everyone would realize, it took me a while to realize this, which is why I say it, every single person has a circle of influence. I talk to so many people who think, I can't really do anything because I don't really have that many followers on social media, or, my platform's not that big. That is such a misconception that you need that to have impact. You don't. Every single person has a circle of influence. Utilize it in whatever way that is. Whether that's even having these conversations is huge in ultimately shifting the culture and winning the country at that point. So have the conversation. Two, I think it's important to understand, it's easy to watch what's happening at the federal level and to kind of, be frustrated by it or to celebrate it without that involvement necessarily. But what matters so much more, I've learned, than what's happening at the federal level is what's happening at the local level. Mm-hmm. Every single person in some capacity should get involved. That doesn't mean every single person needs to run for school board. It doesn't mean every single person needs to, assume some position necessarily, but support the people who are, right? It's pivotal, I think, and again, really seeing change in your local community. Three, and again, something that has been pivotal in my life, is lean on the Lord, right? It sounds pretty cliche, but it is how I'm able to withstand the backlash and the negativity and the hatred. And again, oftentimes the violence that I see is because I'm so secure in my faith, knowing that, again, yes, like I mentioned, it is the stand that I've taken is one rooted in biological reality, but far more important than that to me is maintaining a biblical stance. Yep. And knowing I'm not fighting for anything of this world, I'm fighting for eternal life. And once you're able to shift your perspective in that way, it makes it easy. It really does. Do we really believe Christ is King? That's it. That's awesome. That's it. You mentioned visiting college campuses. As you're touring and as you're speaking, what are you discovering? The good, the bad, the ugly, as you're talking to college students on these various campuses? Well, it's amazing. I've been to about 80 or so different college campuses over the past few years. Really, of course, with the intention of mobilizing, engaging the youth. I think we're a demographic that's often left out of these important but deemed political conversations. So it's been great. Let's see, just this week I was at Ohio State University, packed room. So what I'm seeing, the support is tenfold anything in opposition, but the opposition is rearing its head, right? I think they see the threats that exist and how people aren't buying it anymore. People see through the facade, but there is nothing that gets them going more than that right there. So their form of protest at Ohio State was actually to have like a swimsuit fashion show. Was literally, it was like, it's cold in Columbus. Like, it was like probably 30 degrees, and you have these men outside wearing bikinis, which is quite the spectacle. Mm-hmm. And then you have women who have had their breasts cut off in Speedos or, swim trunks, just really, like that doesn't hurt me. I mean, it hurts me from the standpoint of seeing these people and understanding the pain that they're in,
Sure.
how miserable they are. Of course, I mean, you see them and you immediately resort to prayer, but they think they're doing that as a jab at me. It's really not. So it's all that to say, the extremities, I think, on both sides, the support and the negative, have increased. But I do think we're seeing a shift in college-age kids specifically, as made clear, I think, by the numbers and polling and demographics that we saw following the election, and especially young women, which is cool to see because we're a group that has historically been very left-leaning. And I think maybe we're still leaning a little left. We've seen a big shift, and that's something to celebrate.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about the incident at San Francisco State.
Yeah, well.
Talking about ugly incident.
Yes, I'm actually going back there this coming week, so excited for that. But yeah, I went to San Francisco State University. I guess just naive to believe that these students and community members would come with an open mind and the willingness to have their hearts softened, because they did not. They came with pitchforks and fire. And upon delivering my message, again, to a room filled with most of the room, truthfully, was filled with protesters. Their idea was to infiltrate in, take up all the seats so no one in support could come into the room. But no worry to me, right? This is who needs to hear the message. I deliver the message. But upon delivering that message, hundreds of more protesters rush into the room. They turn off the lights and they ambush me, like fully accosted. I'm being pushed, I'm being shoved, I'm being punched in the face. Ultimately, they end up barricading me in a room and holding me for ransom for about 4, almost 5 hours, demanding that if I wanted to make it back home to see my family safely again, I had to pay them money. The police were being held for ransom with me, unwilling to do anything. They verbatim actually told me that they can't do anything or else they'll lose their jobs. They said they weren't allowed to be seen as anything other than an ally to that community, which again, the community who's on the other side of these doors calling these officers racist pigs for protecting a white girl like me.
It's absurd.
It's absurd. Anyways, eventually we were able to push out, not because the students dispersed. About 40 officers had to form a diamond around me. We got out. But now the DOJ is investigating the university and how they colluded with the students to ensure that I was held captive. Really, it goes to show you how the tentacles of this movement are so widespread. They've laid the groundwork over decades. That's why it's so easy for them to do, with no repercussions. No student was held accountable. No student, there were no repercussions faced by anyone, not the police, not the university, not the individual students. They've laid the groundwork over decades. It's the same groundwork that was necessary to be laid during COVID. That's how, again, they were able to so effectively and easily manipulate the entire country. And that's exactly what they've done with the gender ideology movement as well.
Riley, our audience listens to you. They see what you're standing for and they go, this is common sense. But why is simply saying men are men or women are women met with such hostility in society?
I think it's met with hostility because that's the only thing the other side can meet it with. They can't approach this debate with logic or reason or common sense or lived experience or science. What happened to follow the science? None of that is on their side. All of that is on our side. And when I say our side, again, I really don't mean this partisan, like in a way that's Republicans versus Democrats. I do mean on the side of common sense. So that's all they have is name calling. It's all they have is these petty personal attacks or resorting to social media to flood you with the most obscene, profane, heinous things you could possibly imagine. That's why they resort to violence. It is literally all that they have, which really only reaffirms me, right? Like, I think oftentimes, it took me a while, I'll be honest, to develop that thicker skin. It's not easy to read things about you that aren't true. People calling you names, people saying, they equate this somehow to being a white supremacist. They'll say that, the list goes on of all of the things they will hurl at you. It's hard to read that as a 21-year-old girl. But I've now realized that because of the hatred and the, I guess, directions of which it is directed, it really only reassures me that I'm right over the target, and they don't waste ammunition on targets that they don't want to hit. So I say bring it on at this point.
Riley, the scripture talks about that even through our suffering, God is working out his perfect plan in our life, that he makes us stronger, that he purifies us and through the refiner's fire. How has the suffering and the spiritual battle you faced really grown you spiritually and brought you closer to the Lord?
Honestly, this reminds me of Romans 8:18, which is, for our present sufferings aren't worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed in us. And that feels so evident in my life. I remember hearing my preacher saying this verse when I was younger, and I loved it because I applied it to swimming, right? Like our present sufferings, it was the practice, it was the time you spent in the pool, all of the bad things that came with playing your sport, the sacrifices you had to make. But it paled in comparison when you won a race, or you broke a record, or you won a best time. It made it all worth it. But I think of that verse now in my life, again, right, the present sufferings, sure, it is the name calling. That's pretty much the extent of it. It pales in comparison when you know what you're fighting for, but really more importantly, who you're fighting for, right? Knowing that it's bigger than just you. There's a next generation to come, fighting for them. I have a younger sister who's an elite level gymnast. She will go on to do amazing things. Knowing I'm fighting for her, again, it makes it easy. So all of this, many people, they'll approach me and they'll say, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. First of all, I don't look at myself as some sort of victim. I look at myself as someone who is being used to fulfill God's sovereign purpose. So it's amazing how that transformation has been able to take place around me, but in my personal life, how both my husband and I have been able to grow spiritually because of what would probably be deemed a negative experience. Man, I don't think you can have a testimony without being tested, and that's what that was for me.
One of the tactics of the progressive left is to demonize conservative Christians in order to silence them, shame them, and eventually cancel them. And it really does keep a lot of Christians from speaking out and standing up. You refused to stay silent. So what would your message be, particularly to the next generation that might say, if I speak out and I stand up, I'll be canceled as well. I'll be demonized. What's your call to action to that Christian listening at home?
You know who else was canceled? You know who else was demonized? You know who else was persecuted? Jesus Christ. I look at this persecution as a way to highlight the fact that I am on the right path. So I would say, again, take it on the chin. It's really that simple. Be able to read these things and know what you're standing for is so much greater than anything of this world. That's given me all of the security and the confidence that I need to be able to do what I do. So bring on the persecution. We're actually told that we are going to be persecuted against. So I think in knowing that, it's allowed me to stand firm. It really has, and continue moving forward. Even with Donald Trump in the White House, whatever it is, there's still work to be done, and it's going to take every single person, right? No one person can do all of this on their own. It takes all of us, man, woman, old, young, white, black, no identity factor matters here. The idea that this movement only impacts women or it's a women's issue, they have to handle it, I believe is totally misconstrued. It does impact everyone. It impacts humanity. Therefore, it's going to take all of us to stand up.
Amen. Amen. Riley, we are super proud of you. At Coral Ridge Ministries, we stand behind you and continue to fight the good fight. And we're praying for God's blessing to be upon you.
Well, I appreciate you guys, so thank you.
Thanks, Riley. Riley Gaines is just one of the many incredible voices we featured at this year's Kingdom Come Conference. In the weeks ahead, I'll be sharing more of these conversations here on the City of God with guests like Ali Beth Stuckey and others you won't want to miss. It's not too early to start planning for next year's Kingdom Come Conference. Early access tickets are on sale now. Just visit institutefc.org/KCC to reserve your spot at a discounted rate. As always, thank you for listening to the City of God podcast. Be sure to share this episode with a friend or a family member, and we'll see you right back here next time on the City of God. The City of God podcast is produced by Coral Ridge Ministries and made in partnership with the Institute for Faith and Culture. Visit us at cityofgodpodcast.com to access all of our previous episodes. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or anywhere you get podcasts. A full video version of this podcast is available on YouTube. This is the City of God podcast, where Christ meets culture.